Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the People's Choice Podcast. If you're new to the show, welcome. Hope you enjoy this episode as much as I'm about to enjoy it. Please check out some past content. We're also available on audio, of course, for some of my subscribers that don't know that, which is crazy. I've had people message me saying, "Oh, you're on Spotify?" Like, of course. But it's all good. And I got a really special one for you guys here today. The interview was so nice. We had to do it twice, man. I got Ultimatum back here. These guys have them on the show from episode 61. We had so much fun talking about it. It's my first three-way, I think, podcast that I've done with a band. So now we're back here again. We got Brendan, we got Cam here. We're going to be talking about their amazing music, upcoming album. We also got singles we're going to be talking about and a lot more. I mean, we had such a good time last time. So please welcome Ultimatum. You've been acting all crazy, acting like you've been changing. What's going on? What's up, guys?
How's it going, Alvin? Thank you so much for having us back. We loved it. Like you mentioned, we loved it the first time. Great conversation. So we really appreciate you having us back.
Yeah, no problem, man. Like I said, a little off camera, I was so excited when I got, you guys' message. I was like, yeah, let's make it start right now. And I was like, oh, wait, check my calendar. Just trying to stay busy and stuff, man. Because, yeah, we had such a great time last time, getting to know you guys, coming all the way from Thunder Bay. For all my new audience that doesn't know, you guys come from Thunder Bay, Canada, so it's really cool as I try to take over the world, like I mentioned in one of my podcasts before, I'm trying to get people from all over the world, all over here. So it's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're for people who didn't see the last podcast, yeah, Thunder Bay, it's northwestern Ontario, Canada, and we're kind of isolated in that respect. It's about 110,000 people within Thunder Bay, but then it's like an 8-hour drive either way to kind of hit any other city, like bigger city. And we're only like about 45-minute drive from the States, actually. So we're pretty close to the States in terms of the border and everything like that. So it's it helps because it allows us to really kind of harness that creative energy, being in that kind of a smaller to medium sized city, because we're able to kind of get together, especially in the winters. They're so long and cold. It helps to have the studio here and be able to kind of lock ourselves away to some respect and just kind of focus on creating new music, new ideas. So I think it honestly helps kind of coming from a smaller city in terms of creativity.
Yeah, definitely. And you can definitely hear that in you guys' music, how creative you guys are. And that's one thing that you guys mentioned that you really love about your music and what it represents is that you guys try to make sure you don't sound like no one else. You got your own unique sound. So I wanted to ask about your creative process. I know we touched a little bit on it where you was like, sometimes like the challenging thing could be trying to mash everything together. So like, what are some of the steps that you guys like to take when it comes to creating, let's say either it's going to be a single or an EP or an album? Like what's some of the creative process that really gets you guys going? And either Camden or Brendan, you guys could start.
Did you want to go ahead, Brendan?
Yeah. When it comes to creating anything, I think just letting it flow is the most important aspect of it. Because, if you overthink something, it could literally just ruin it for the most part. If letting I could just speak for myself in this part, just letting it flow and just listening to what everyone else is doing in the band, and then creating on top of that to complement what they're doing, I believe is probably the most practical approach. Just letting your thoughts flow freely onto your instrument.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like to Brendan's point, we don't overthink things or try not to, especially in the early stages of the creative process. We just kind of I think we're all inspired by one another. Like we get in that space, and especially Brendan and I and our producer Russ. We meet regularly every Saturday nights in Thunder Sound Studio, which is our studio in Thunder Bay. And we're very fortunate to have that place to go and have our own producer and who's a part of our group. And we try to just not shoot down any new ideas. Like our goal is to always write a new album that's very different than the last, but maintaining our signature sound, right? Like that signature Ultimatum sound that people I guess know about us. So we want to retain that, but we want to also explore new territory. So sometimes it's very comical at first, because we can come up with something that sounds just totally unique and kind of exciting, right? Because it doesn't sound like anything else. And then we just, like building blocks, we just start to kind of build on those ideas one after the other, right? And it's cool having Brendan and I, we inspire each other musically, so we're able to kind of, if Sam, our singer, sends us an idea or whatever, or we just kind of build on an idea at the studio, then by the end of the night, between Brendan, myself, and Russ, we have a fully finished song that's like a brand new song, right? Which is cool because we get to go listen to it and critique it, and then go back to the studio and build on that, right? So we're fortunate in the sense that we don't have to honestly pay for studio time. Like we have our producers a part of the family, because it allows us to not have to be fully prepared and go to the studio and get it right the first time. It allows us to make mistakes along the way and then just build off of that, right? So I think that really helps our sound kind of develop into what it is today, is that ability to try things, fail, try them again, and not have to pay ridiculous fees for studio time, right? So
it is. It's ridiculous. Like I don't know how much they would charge, if they're in Canada, but over here in especially in North Carolina, man, that's the number one complaint from the independent artists that I talk to, and they're like, man, studio time is ridiculous, man. So it's definitely a big plus. You guys got that.
Totally. Sure. And we've done that. Like Brendan and I and the rest of the guys, we've done a few different studios prior to landing in Thunder Sound in our teen years. And it was, so we have a different appreciation for what we have now too, because we did that. Like we paid, a certain dollar value for X amount of time to create 3 singles. That was just, ridiculous. And then when Russ heard that, our producer, who's also James's uncle, our bass player's uncle, he heard that and he's like, I can do that for these guys, and I can probably do a better job than they're doing. And help them kind of craft their sound, right? And the goal was just to make us sound better live, like so we could hear ourselves back. Like that's what Russ thought we were trying to get out of that relationship, is just to be able to hear ourselves back, to critique ourselves for our live performance. But then we ended up making albums together and taking on a whole new life, which, like I said, it helps the appreciation we have for having him and having the studio, and we try not to take that for granted, right? So
definitely. And speaking of singles you're mentioning, the last time I had you guys on the show, you were, if I'm not mistaken, either just released or was just about to release In My Blood, the single, which was just awesome. I love that song. But let's talk about your other singles. Since we last had you guys on here, we've had from Run From You and Upon Yourself. Can we speak some more about like those and I guess we could dive a little further deeper into In My Blood as well?
I can go first, and then Brendan, because I think we'll have 2 different viewpoints on it. The In My Blood single was the second single we released, and it's also the title track of the album. The album's called In My Blood, and it's going to be that artwork. It was created by a local artist, Bianca, who's
shout
amazing.
Out to Bianca. I talked about it a little bit when I was letting her know about the interview, and I put her the graphic in there. She's like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Yeah.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, she's an awesome local artist. She actually did the last album too, Born in the Afterglow, the artwork, and then she did this one as well. That's going to be released any day now. And it's Run From You was exciting because it was just so different. It was very techno infused, up tempo, dancey rock track with Brendan's, crazy beastly drums over top. And, I tried to put some soaring guitars over top too, to kind of match the techno. So it's just very different. Right. And that was a kind of a comedic one to come up with, because it was just so different than anything else that we've done. So I was very excited about that. And that was the first track that we actually started working on out of the 10 that are going to be on this album. And it was just a really good kind of window into what this could be. And we were all, really excited about it. And we wanted to keep that same kind of thread throughout the whole album of up-tempo, dance, rock, with just different elements infused into each song, but keeping that tempo kind of high. Good album to kind of like work out to, I guess, right? Like in terms of that high energy piece. And
I thought I was the only one that was really running to that song too on the treadmill.
Yeah, it's and that's what it's designed for, honestly. And then the In My Blood piece is more of kind of like that radio friendly kind of like up tempo driving rock anthem, right? That's very hooky, like what Sam's got in the chorus. It's very kind of melodic and really, really hooky, like it's an earworm. So we had to release that one too as a single, I feel like. And then Upon Yourself is honestly one of my personal favorites on the album, just because it has such a like a I don't know, just like a heavy but beautiful, haunting feel to it. But it's also very dancey, right? So and the chorus is probably, in my opinion, amongst the most catchy on the album. I know we all have different viewpoints on that, but I just not necessarily like I love all of the songs in the album, but I just thought those three were a decent representation of the collection of 10 songs that are going to appear on the album. So we wanted to get those out there, and we wanted to get that feedback from our listeners and the public, just to kind of gauge how people feel about it, because we were very, very excited about sharing these songs with everyone. And but I know Brendan has probably a different point of view. So.
Yeah, when I sat down, I was creating these songs with Cam and Russ and the other guys, obviously there too. I was coming from the vantage point of what would the audience think of these songs? Like, what would want to get these people into these songs, right? So it's like you got to have that steady pace, like a dance anthem. You got to have that steady pace in these songs, and that it really challenged me as a drummer to infuse the style I had from previous albums into a dancier feel. So it just pushed my drumming to a new level, and it pushed Cam's guitaring to a new level, Sam's vocal work to a new level, and James's bass work to a new level, because we were all trying to achieve a specific sound that would match what we had envisioned for these songs. And to branch off of Cam's point, the songs that we have released as our singles really infuse the way we were looking at these songs. And it's just been a great journey. Been good.
Definitely. And it really has been a really great journey. And I just listened to those songs and I was like, man, it's really good. And it's just a sneak peek of what we could expect from the album. So what's some more like that we could talk about the album? I know it's coming out really soon. And what else could fans expect from this? Because I know we talked about those three singles, a little more upbeat, tempo, dancey. What else could the world expect from that? Or I should say my peeps. Let me talk about peeps first.
I think for sure they can definitely expect a creative side of Ultimatum that they haven't heard before. We've tried different things with the rest of the way this album worked out, and it's just different. I mean, like personally, like as a collective, we all listen to many different styles of music, and this album alone, I can guarantee you won't find anything like it. You won't hear anything like it. So it's gonna be shocking when our audience members hear it. Even when we heard it back, we're like, is that us? To a degree, right? So it's going to be great, man. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, and I think too, like to go back to the artwork point, is that it for us as artists, it's really important that we have like a solid representation, art and music, because that was always important to me growing up. I'd get into my dad's record collection, and I just stare at like the albums, right? Like the album cover, even before I listened to the music, right? Even before I heard the music, or I was able to put those two together. So for me, like it's such a vivid picture. Like I feel like the artwork and the music and the image and everything need to kind of be cohesive and go together. And I think like, once again, I think Bianca kind of, she gave us the artwork early on in the project. So I think that subconsciously inspired some of the sound that went behind the music. To Brandon's earlier point, some of the songs on the album, like Blind Through Time, which is going to be the fourth single, it's track 5, I believe, on the album, and it's just so different. Like we don't have any verses. Like the verses are just instrumental, but the choruses are massive. Like we intentionally kept the verses out of that song because the instrumentation kind of carries the song, but when the chorus hits, because there's no sung verses, it just It's probably the biggest chorus in the whole album. So I'm really excited. And once again, that's a different approach because Sam didn't sing verses in that song. So just because we loved the way that the music was kind of flowing, right? And I know, that's our producer's favorite song on the album. So, and then there's some that are just like, they have little pretty piano gaps, and then bam, it kicks in with the, full sound, right? It sounds like it's going to be a ballad, and then it takes a side swipes you, right? So, I think what to expect on the album, like just to try to sum it up, it's a lot about relationships, kind of some of the darker, haunting elements of relationships, and also some of the more dysfunctional elements of relationships that, we all have experienced at some point in time. And, just to be able to kind of marry those two together and take you on a bit of a journey, but doing it in a way where it kind of encapsulates a bunch of different styles, but keeping that tempo high. So it's that consistent up tempo. Like, we don't have one specific song on the album that's just a slow ballad. We have songs that have ballad qualities to them, but then it kicks it up again, right? We were trying to basically be a melting pot and trying to take as many different sounds, like a lot of late 90s. Those singles have been compared to kind of like a late 90s rock / techno kind of feel, which is cool because
that's my favorite era right there.
Yeah, we grew like we were kids. We were kids at that time, right? We grew up listening to all sorts of stuff, right? Because the 90s were very diverse. So to be compared to that, both from a visual standpoint in terms of like the single artwork that we've released, but also the music, that's really cool. That's really cool for me because people have said that sounds like they've heard it before, but it sounds brand new. So it's original enough that they can't compare it to anything, but it's familiar enough that they can relate it back to a specific feeling that's a bit nostalgic for them, which once again, we didn't set out to do that. Like, that was not our goal, but the fact that happened is actually really cool for us as artists, right? Because it shows that we're bringing something new to the table still, but we're also leveraging those influences from all angles and creating something brand new with our signature sound behind it, kind of driving it, right?
That's so true. And I'm definitely relate to the album so much because if I wear this heart broke thing right there, went through a nice little breakup, and it was hard, but it happens in life, and that's why I really like that the album is like that, but it's not like on that like you're gonna be so depressed and missing your loved one so much. I mean, sure, there's gonna be moments in there, but like it's like I said, more upbeat. It's kind of like that when you're in that weird stage of like you're moving on, but it's like you still remember, like, I guess kind of like the lessons that you learned from that relationship, and like I'm gonna apply that to moving forward. So it's real
cool. Yeah, exactly.
Really cool. And I love that song you sent me, because I think like when I think it was like a minute. I was trying to time it. I listened like back like 3 times. I think it was like a minute and 4 seconds before like I even heard like the first verse. And because first I was like, wait, what is this, an instrumental only? Like, wait, hold on. And I'm like, this is really good. I'm sitting there just bopping like that. I was listening to my car and I was like, oh wait, and I was like, oh okay, here we go. Like, I love it, guys. That was real cool. I love that touch because I don't, at least my memory, I can't remember anyone really doing anything like that and probably ever, like where you go like a little beyond a minute and you're just vibing to the music. Like, that is really cool, guys, before you hear your first verse.
Awesome. Thank you. And we actually, it's about halfway through the album, right? It's track 5. So it kind of, it's in a good place on the album where it can kind of, we wanted to just do something different with that song because it just sounds different. It's got a bit of a techno build that kind of comes in. And then when the chorus hits, it's like, it's big, right? It's a big chorus. And to your point too, Alvin, like, we wanted to take like all of the elements of kind of, well, Sam, in terms of lyrically, I think he was drawing from past experiences, right? And kind of, he writes very honestly in his lyrics. So he writes very open and honest, enough though that it's relatable to everyone, right? And it's not so doom and gloom, but it connects in a different way, right? Because there's so many different elements to relationships, whether it's in a partner relationship or whether it's in just relationships in life, period, right? Like, there's love, there's loss, there's all of these things that go on in relationships. So one of the great ways that he writes lyrics, in my opinion, is the fact that it's very, very relatable and it's personal to each individual that listens to the music, right? Because he might have been experiencing something in that moment, or Brendan or myself or James, and we write very open and honestly, but it can translate to people in a different way. So it almost doesn't really matter what he was thinking or feeling at that time. It's what the listener is feeling as a result of his open and honest writing, right? And then musically, Brendan and I kind of take the reins on that for the most part, and with Russ's help as well, our producer. And we try to write just, very, very creatively and differently and just outside of the box, and we challenge each other too, right? Like, because Brendan will come up with, I'll come up with this instrumentation and think, okay, I have no idea what Brendan's going to do now, right? And then Brendan sits behind the drums and it just pops, right? He'd just come up with something that I didn't expect. Track 3, Last Chance it's called, was a really good indication of that, because he just puts these huge drums on there and I did not expect it, and it made that song so epic. Like, it just made it just huge, right? I thought that was going to be like the ballad of the album, and no, it kind of almost comes in with like a breakdown feel right out of the gate, which I was like, oh man, that is so awesome, right? So you see it to come to life and you see it take form, and it's like, oh, that's, and then James, of course, like, coming in and they're adding his bass flair to the whole mix, right? And it's really cool to just kind of push each other. But that's one of the things that we try to do, is we try not to kind of look at the last album. We try to kind of all get together and brainstorm where we want to go and what we wanted to do. Like, the boundaries we set for ourselves is to create an up-tempo dancey rock album, and that was it. And then everything else was fair bear. Like, we could just go and do whatever we wanted, and we don't try not to stifle each other's ideas. Just like, let's just explore them and see what happens, right? And then if it doesn't work, back to the drawing board, and that's totally fine. If it does work, though, it's going to be something incredibly different, and then that excites us, right?
Whose idea was it first to start In My Blood, like, to have that like kind of like relationship key factor to it?
That's probably I think it would have been Sam. I'd be thinking.
Shout out to you, Sam.
Yeah, if you're watching, Sam.
Yeah, if you're watching, your singles help me out.
Yeah, I know Brendan, Russ, and I were primarily the ones behind the decision-making process of this album for the most part. Like, obviously James was a big key role in that too, but it was primarily the three of us making those decisions. So we were the ones that kind of pick and chose what singles we wanted to release and what that was going to look like. Because it's funny, because Sam would, like, for this album, Sam would send a little snippet of a piano thing or whatever, and with some vocals behind it, right? Not even finished, just a melody or like a chorus or whatever, and we would listen to it, and basically we could make that whatever we wanted, right? Like, we could have made this whole album really, really slow and ballad based, but we chose not to do that, right? So we chose In My Blood. Well, it wasn't a conscious thing. It was more just kind of like, I liked the melody that he had for the verse, and then Brendan and I built it into what it is now. And it just had such a dancey, like, radio friendly song feel to it. So we had to release that, right? Like, and then Run From You, I think that was an important first one, because that got people's attention, because the last album was kind of more soft and ballad driven and artistic. And Run From You was like the complete antithesis of that, right? It was where it was just very, very heavy and so we wanted to make a statement with that song. And then In My Blood was kind of like, okay, well, this is the sure shot kind of, like, radio friendly. I think people are gonna like this for the most part. And then Upon Yourself was like one of my personal favorites, so I was pushing to get that one out there because I just thought people would like it, right? And then we just kind of went from there.
Awesome. And I love Upon Yourself. Brendan, is that actually one of your favorites too from the album?
Upon Yourself, definitely one of my favorites. I like it. It's one of my favorites because it's the most challenging to play. I like the challenge aspect of it. It's not like the way these songs are challenges me every time I sit behind my drum set. So it's I like the challenge aspect of it. I'm doing different things with my set that challenges me every time. So it's like I have to really focus when I get in there, So it just helps us grow as musicians. That's why I love it. That's awesome.
Definitely. It's always about growth, man. And actually, another thing too that I wanted to ask you guys, like, I know with the album coming out, but collaborations. Like, do you guys plan on doing any collaborations with other bands pretty soon, or do you guys just want to stick to doing your own thing for the time being?
It's an interesting question, actually.
We've talked. we it's definitely been tossed around the studio between the three of us, but nothing is set in stone yet about that.
Okay. Yeah, we want to experiment with that. We have something that's in the works. Actually, James, our bass player, kind of suggested it as a possible idea, and we all really kind of liked it. Is that, you know, we were thinking about even just getting other artists, like from local bands that we really, you know, admire, and pulling in kind of a person to, you know, be featured on a song, whether it's a bass player, a singer, a guitar player, and we would let them kind of almost do like a bit of a cover thing, right? Where you'd let them pick a cover, come in, sing it, or, you know, play guitar on it, or like there wouldn't be any hurt feelings on our end, right? Like we want to kind of, it would be almost like a bit of a cover thing. And then we were talking also about like it being called a double EP, so where we have kind of really one nice. I like that. One grouping of, and that's James, our bass player. He gets full credit for that idea. But
James.
He's the strategist behind the scenes that helps us with all of these things, and comes up with these cool ideas. And so we were thinking about too, just making like the first EP being songs that didn't make the album, because there's a couple that didn't make the album in demo form, and mixed with maybe some older songs that we bring back and release that on a small collection of music. And then the double EP being the covers portion, where we pick, you know, a singer who comes in, or a bass player who comes in, or whoever, and would select a cover song, and then we would do it with them in our studio. And then that would be kind of like the part 2 of the EP. But we still haven't ironed that stuff out. We're going to be discussing more kind of future plans, but we're just waiting till this album goes out and then having conversations around the album. And we have another show lined up, which is going to kind of, I think, act as a bit of a virtual album release show on November 26th here at Atmos in Thunder Bay. And we're really looking forward to that. We're playing with, I think, 3 other bands that we respect, you know, totally respect. So we're excited for that show. But beyond that, I think we all have to get together and just kind of figure out, okay, well, what does the next project look like? We haven't really ironed out those details. There's a lot of possibilities, like the ones that we just mentioned, but yeah, it's hard to say. It's always weird in between transition, like, you know, just finishing a project and then the idea of possibly starting another project. Like, we don't want to necessarily jump right into something. We want to, you know, ensure that this album has longevity, because we are so pumped about it and believe so much in it. But also we're trying to also forecast, like, where do we want to go next? You know, I think that's just natural, because we're all very creative and driven people for the most part, right? So we want to just think about, you know, what's next for Ultimatum, right?
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, what is that like when you you know, you drop your album, of course you do all the promotion, you know, pre-album, post, and then it's like, okay, now what, guys? Like how does that really work? I'm just really like fascinated about that, especially when you have, like, you know, a whole band, when it's like, you know, you ever ran into that where it's like, you're ready, and then like the others like, not yet, guys, or like, how's that whole, like, when it's time to transition to, let's start the new project?
It's for us, it certainly seems like Sam will come up with the ideas and he'll send us a little snippet of what he's working on in an email, right? And then we'll take that to the studio and we will literally just start building it. You know, there's that's the way it usually works. Or sometimes Cam will sit down, he'll have an idea. Sometimes I'll have a drum beat and I'll just be rat-a-tatting away, but you know, I'll buy my drums and Cam will just start jamming, and we literally create songs just out of thin air.
We don't have
a set date that we're gonna like start creating something new. We just let it flow and create.
Yeah, we don't have a set formula, right? Like in the past, like there's been times where, you know, I've kind of written all the music and then the vocals have gone on after in the past. Mm-hmm. The last 2 albums were different because we were, you know, right in the midst of COVID, right? Mm-hmm. So there was some leniency in terms of, you know, the only one of us who had the ability to, you know, write different ideas at home, like had the equipment and the setup was Sam, just because he had that ability, aside because we were all trying to isolate at that time just to ensure that we weren't, you know, we were doing our part. So we're going to shift that focus, obviously. So he could, for us to continue to go through COVID, we would get together at the studio where it made sense for us to, right? Like based on the, you know, the Ontario health kind of piece. And So Sam would send us ideas, and it allowed us to take these little snippets of ideas. And then when we were able to get together at the studio and it made sense, then Brendan and I would go in the studio and we'd build these songs into, full blown finished songs, right?
Yeah.
Going forward, we're going to get back to like a format of us all kind of getting together in the studio and doing that together, right? I think that cohesion is really important. And you don't hear it on the album. It sounds very cohesive, but we need to get back to that, right? Like we're at that stage now where it makes sense to get back. We should all be getting back in the studio and kind of creating music together, and have that cohesion. But it's interesting because I don't like we've been called a prolific band, like because we release something and we go right back to the drawing board and we start writing a new thing. So it varies, but it usually starts with like a sit down, like we'll release an album, we'll kind of have conversations like we're having with you right now, and we'll really try to push it in terms of like promotion and media and all of those things to really kind of, hype up the album. But then usually we'll get together and we'll sit down and we'll have a conversation around what we kind of envision for the next album, right? All of us, like we throw a bunch of ideas in a hat basically, and we all just kind of, work it out. Yeah, or sometimes it happens very organically, right? Like the last two albums, I think were very premeditated between Sam and I. We had a chat about Born in the Afterglow, and I knew that one was going to be very, he sent a lot of piano ideas, and I knew that was going to be basically up to Brendan and I and James to be able to kind of dictate what songs were going to be heavier, what songs were going to be lighter, like how the pacing was going to go, which I absolutely love. And then same with this album too. I mean, it was very much like a premeditated thing that we wanted to have an up-tempo dance rock album that sounded very different than anything we've ever heard. And I feel like, we achieved that, right? And it was very important that the music, between Brendan and I and Russ getting together, and of course James midweek, just making sure that was represented musically. And then whatever Sam put on in terms of lyrical content was just at that point was secondary to me, because we had already achieved our goal in terms of creating that thing that we set out to create before we actually sat down and started writing In My Blood, right? So now I don't know where we're going next. Like I said, aside from that double EP idea that we were throwing around, like
that was like breaking news too for us. I mean,
that's insider.
But
insider
information.
Yeah.
Like only get at the people's choice, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't even talked to some of the people in the back. So this is insider information, but it's it's good because I mean we're at that stage now again where there's no ideas that are off the table, which is nice, right? Like I said, we don't want to stifle our growth, and we don't want anything holding us back from moving forward. So we want to aside from that idea of just doing the double EP piece, we haven't really talked much about the creative vision that we're going to move forward to next time. I'm sure we're going to be, in the near future, we're probably going to have a sit down. But right now, our main focus is primarily pushing this album, right, and really promoting it on our social media, really promoting it, and just getting it circulated around the globe. So, and I love like we mentioned last time, I absolutely love hearing what people have to say pro or con, right, about the new album. I always love like that feedback is so vital for us with our listeners. So
definitely, and I love it, and I can't wait for this whole album to come out, and it should be up by the time this interview is dropping. So you got all the support from the People's Choice Podcast family, all my peeps. We'll definitely be pushing it out there because you guys got a message that the world really needs to hear. And if we can switch gears a little bit, I want to talk more about your upcoming performances coming up pretty soon. That's pretty cool. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think it is, but is this the first time you guys going to be performing like post-COVID, where it's like not so like restricted so much, or is this like I'm trying to think. I remember seeing a lot of you guys Instagram posts, but is this the first one or is not?
No, it is the Ultimatum sense. We did this. Okay. There's a Canadian band called the Tragically Hip, and we've been doing like and they're a classic Canadian band. We've played a few shows around that because we've done it for Gord Downey, the singer who passed away. We've done it for his charity. So all the proceeds that we collect in those shows go to his charity. So we've played a couple of those, one on Canada Day and one on, it was piggybacking off a big festival that was here in Thunder Bay called Wake the Giant. And we have a lot of fun doing that. And our bass player actually sings in that show because he sounds a lot like Gord Downey. So it's really fun, right? And Brendan played drums on one of those, but Sam wasn't represented in that. But we played 2 shows so far, but this is the first official Ultimatum show that we've played post-COVID, and we were supposed to play one. Actually, it was going to be a huge festival in Thunder Bay that the city was putting on at one of our parks' 100-year celebration or 101-year celebration. And it was going to be huge. It was like a 4-day festival, and unfortunately that fell through due to lack of funding around COVID. But we are going to take something similar, like a similar set. We're going to play it at this new club, which is called Atmos, which is a kind of a newer club in Thunder Bay. And we're playing with 3 other amazing bands, other just phenomenal, amazing bands. There might be more. I don't know. It's kind of in the early stages of the planning. But we're excited because, like I said, I want to kind of, promote our album there as kind of like an official CD release party kind of thing. So, but we're really excited for that because it's a new venue that we've never played at before. It's more of like a dance kind of vibe from what I'm told. It's like kind of a bit of a club. A lot of DJs go there. So we've kind of designed an up-tempo dance rock set list to to kind of match the venue. So we're really, really excited for that. That's the 26th of November that that's scheduled for. So
I cannot wait. And Brendan, make sure you hold on to those drumsticks, all right? It's an insider for all my peeps. You got to watch the first one to get that insider.
Yeah, I'll try, Alvin. Keep that
and that story was so funny. I know we talked a little bit about that last one from the last interview we had. I gotta ask just some more because I feel like you guys got some more like funny stories from like just since you guys been together since like 2007. So like, can I ask for just like one more from each of you guys, like a funny story before we end up wrapping up?
Brennan, you go. You go first.
Okay, well, I have one, and it goes way back. I don't think I talked about this one. Oh. So Cam has when we started as a band, we used to jam at Cam's parents' house all the time, right? And his parents have a treadmill, and so sure enough, we're like rocking out, we're having a good time, and just I don't know, I decided to go for a run on this treadmill and just crank it up full speed as soon as the song was done. And I started getting winded. I definitely overestimated how far I can actually run on a treadmill. And so there's this bar that goes across, and my knee ended up smacking it, and it came up and it hit me right in the head, and I went flying off the treadmill. I got stuck against the wall. It was that was painful. Like, and obviously everybody else was just killing themselves laughing. And yeah, that's my story. That was a painful treadmill accident.
Yeah. Oh, we have so many stories. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I told you this. Maybe I'll go with a different one this time or whatever. Brendan does some weird stuff in his sleep, like really, really odd.
Let's turn to the pick on Brendan episode.
Yeah. He's following that same theme, right? He's a big angry man. I don't know where that comes from, but he did a few things. Yeah, maybe the caffeine piece, but I know that he did a few weird things, like in passing, like when we were in our teen years, and we would, he'd sleep over at my place or whatever because we'd be jamming, right? We'd take the school bus the next day. Like Brendan and I are like brothers, right? We've been together the longest. We're the co-founders of this whole thing, and so anyways, it came to a head when we were on our Ontario tour in 2014 because he would do some, like, I did not want to sleep in the same room as him because he would do some really weird shit, like anime, almost like you'd have to like he has to be awake doing this because there's no way he's doing this like in his sleep, right? So one of the members of the group or whatever, he's a diabetic, I guess. He was taking his shots, right, midnight, and I was kind of like half asleep, and so he's taking the shot or whatever, and Brendan sits up and makes this like god awful sound, like some sort of demon, like just like he just comes up and he makes the sound. I can't even mimic it. And then he starts looking like angrily at our web designer at the time or whatever. And he's putting this insulin needle in his stomach and he's like, what the hell, Byers, right? And Brendan cocks his arm back And it's like he's like swinging it around like this, ready to smack him, and he's sleeping, like he's dead sleeping. And then he makes this weird sound and he falls back asleep. And he would just move stuff like a garbage pail and all these things, but he would do it so aggressively and angrily that by the end of the tour, I did not want to be in the same room as him at all. I had to one more time at James's family's house in Aurelia because we were sleeping in the basement and I had nowhere else to go. Right. So unfortunately, once again, he was just doing all kinds of weird, like exorcism kind of stuff in his sleep, like flopping around and making sounds.
What? Like, even in Aurelia?
Yeah. Yeah. In the basement.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You were saying all sorts of like, I swear you were speaking Latin or something. But doing it in the most horrifying way, right? Like it was something out of a horror movie, but I saw that.
I tried to put it in there so I could paint the picture because that's
yeah. No, I loved how you edited the last one. It was really, really cool because it was like he would come up on the screen when we were talking about him. Just added that comedic mind to it,
right?
Yeah.
And guys, thank you so much for being back on the show. We talked a lot about your upcoming album, In My Blood. You guys pick up that copy. Well, see, copy. See, we're talking about album covers. I'm thinking old school way. I know most people just listening on Spotify and other things, but definitely check out In My Blood. Can't wait for you guys' performance coming on November 20th. Is there any last thing you guys would like to say to all my peeps and new audience before we wrap up here?
Yeah, just we appreciate all the support from you, Alvin, and your viewers and loyal listeners. And yeah, we love hearing, like I said before, we love hearing the feedback. On Instagram is probably the best way at this point to get a hold of us. We have a website, we have all the different socials, but Instagram is probably the one that we stay most up to date with. So we, like I said, we absolutely love hearing feedback from different people all over the world. And like I said, pro, con, whatever, if the music makes you feel a certain way, or you take the time to check out a single or the album, hugely appreciated. So we just appreciate anyone who's taken the time out to, listen to any of the singles so far, and the people who will take the time out to listen to the album. We want to hear from you, right? We want to hear that feedback because it's so vital for us as artists to kind of have a pulse check on how people feel around the art that we're creating, right? So, Brendan, you have any final thoughts?
I want to thank everybody who has supported us through everything we have done all these years, because without them and without meeting all the amazing people like Alvin and everyone else to help get our name out there, we wouldn't be where we are. So thank you to all of you.
Definitely. And I'll make sure to put all you guys' socials and website in the description for all my peeps to check them out. Ultimatum, such a great band. Like it's like hard to balance that. If someone ever asks me, were they better as like human beings or music? I'm like, man, they're both up here. You guys are always
thank you, brother.
Yeah, no problem, bro, man. You guys are always welcome on the show. I'm really happy for you guys, man. You guys continue to grind. Like I said, it'll all be in the description. Check out their singles as well. One of my favorites, In My Blood, Upon Us, and Run From You. Make sure I get that right. Man, I cannot wait, man, for you guys to really blow up, man, for real. And, all success and blessings and good luck, especially with this coming out. Ultimatum, ladies and gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, y'all. You guys have a great one, man.
Too.
All right, brother.
You too.